Today, we're going to learn how to make this spooky, drippy droopy black letter design in Procreate. We're going to start with the basic letter design, including some fancy flourishing. We're then going to add some cool drippy droopy, that's what I call them anyway, drippy effects to the letters. And then we're going to wrap up by adding some finishing effects to all of the letters and tweaking the background, adding some colors. It's going to be fun. So let's jump in. I'm going to start with a 4000 by 3000 pixel canvas. And the first thing that I'm going to do is add a guide just to help me line up my lettering here on the canvas. Click here in the top left corner, the wrench. I'm going to insert a file. You could insert a photo if you have a photo of some guides, or if you'd like, I have some free guides available in my freebie pack, the Blackletter Treasure Trove. So again, I'm just going to jump in here and select a set of guides. This is the 252 guide, which means a sender of 2 pen widths, X height of 5 pen widths, and descender of 2 pen widths. And as you can see, it placed the image here. Now it's a white set of guides. I do have black guides in that free pack, but we're going to work with this and I'm going to show you a trick on how to use these. The guide's been placed, so the first thing I'm going to do is select here in the top left corner on the adjustments. I'm going to select the curves option and apply it to the entire layer. Now all I have to do is grab this bottom left dot or bottom left handle and move it all the way to the top, and take this top right handle and move it all the way to the bottom. And what that basically did is invert my guides. So now they're black instead of white. Now all I have to do is go back to my movement tool and pull the guides up from this top handle. And again, I'm focusing really on the X height here. I'm not paying as much attention to the ascender and descender. I'm going to pull this last one down because I really do want this lettering to be fairly large on the page. And then I can just drag it around until it's roughly where I need it to be. Again, I'm not being too careful with this one because it's a fairly loose design. Once I'm happy with where the guides are placed, I'm just going to tap on that arrow in the top left corner again, and we've placed the guides on the page. And again, you can see my little template here in the back that I'm going to be using just to create a faithful duplicate of the image. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new layer that I'm going to work on because I don't want to work on this layer, otherwise the text that I put on the canvas here will be stuck on top of the guides, and I want to be able to hide the guides by unchecking that layer later on in the design. To add a layer, I'm just going to click here, click the plus sign, and I've got a new layer to work with. Now that we've got our guide set up, I'm going to select a brush. I'm going to start with a brush from my broad nib selection, just the Essential Blackletter Calligraphy pack. And I'm going to start with just a standard flat brush that's not pressure sensitive. So I'm just going to select this one here at the top. And I'm going to size the brush to be about 55 units here at the left, or 55%. Now we're ready to add our lettering. Now, as I'm creating this design, I really want you to think of creating these letters using 4 simple lines. Those 4 simple lines are a vertical line, a diagonal line, a skinny diagonal line that moves up here to the top and right, and then a horizontal line. And as you'll see, we're going to be able to create this entire design using even slight variations of those 4 basic strokes. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit just by pinching the screen, and I'm going to start my design with the letter S. And again, at this point, we're just drawing the basic structure of the lettering. So I'm going to start with a diagonal line coming down, and then a vertical line coming up from there, and a almost horizontal line with a bit of a curve, and then we're going to carry this line all the way down to the bottom. Okay, that's a vertical line, and then we'll curve one more diagonal line to meet that third line that we just drew. To finish off the S, I'm going to draw a slightly curved horizontal line here and just pull it in a little bit there. And don't worry if the letters aren't completely clean here, because we're going to have a chance to clean them up later. Okay, so next I'm going to work on the P. That's going to be just this little diagonal line here. And just as a reminder, as you might have just seen me do, 2-finger tap does an undo, 3-finger tap will redo that stroke. So if I'm not happy with something that I wrote, it's just a 2-finger tap, and I can redo the stroke like so. So with the P, you can see we just did a small diagonal stroke, and then I'm going to do a fluid vertical line down. And to make this line perfectly vertical, all I have to do is not let go of my pen at the end. And then after a moment, the line will straighten, and then I can just let go, and I've got it as straight as I would like it to be. And you can include a little bit of curvature there if you want. We're just going to start with making the straight line just so that I can show you that little tip. The next step, we're going to use that same tip again, and I'm going to draw a skinny diagonal line up here. It actually came out fairly straight without holding down. And then a horizontal / diagonal line there. I guess it's more diagonal than it is horizontal. Okay, and then we're going to slide into the middle a bit. Draw another somewhat vertical line until I reach that bottom area. And then draw my final diagonal line to finish out that P. Now the next step, I'm just going to slide my canvas over a little bit. And I'm going to draw the O. So the first step for the O, I'm going to just draw a vertical line here. Now a slightly curved diagonal line moving down. I'm going to come back up to the top, draw a somewhat horizontal but curved line moving to the right. And then I'm going to finish with another curved line here to finish the right side. And another fun trick, if I decide I like that O and I just want to duplicate it completely rather than rewrite it, I'm going to grab my selection tool here in the top left, and then I'm just going to draw a little selection here right around the O. Okay, now I can copy that and then I can paste it by pasting here. And then I can just drag my copy of my O right next to it, and that will make them perfectly identical. Or of course you could just redraw it if you'd like. But that's a very handy tip if you've written an O that you like and you don't want to have to replicate it again in Procreate. The next step, I'm going to slide my canvas over to the left, and I'm going to draw my K. Okay, when I pasted the O, it put me on a new layer, but that's fine. I'm totally okay being on separate layers here, because I can always merge them later, or I can just keep them on separate layers and work with them that way. The next step I'm going to follow is I'm going to draw a vertical line for the top of my K, come down to around here, and let's hold and make it vertical for fun. And then a short diagonal line here at the bottom. I didn't line that up as well, so let's do it one more time. Short diagonal line. And now from the top here, I'm just going to draw a small box inside here. So I'm going to start with an upwards diagonal line, curve it a little bit, diagonal line moving back down again, and if I hold, I can straighten that out. And then I'm going to draw a slightly horizontal line moving this way. Let's try to get it to meet our diagonal line. And then a final vertical line downwards. And I'm just trying to get it to line up with that last stroke, but it's okay if it doesn't completely. Just like so. Next I'm going to do the Y, so just a small diagonal line there, just like we did previously with the P. I'm going to slide over a little bit, draw a vertical line, and then draw a little curved line down here. Sliding over a bit, I'm going to draw another diagonal line over here, and then slide in, pull my line down again till it meets this one. And now I'm just going to finish off that Y. So next, sometimes when you put the pad of your hand down, it will actually do an undo gesture accidentally. So it's handy to just remember that 3-finger tap will let you redo the gesture or redo the last stroke you did, saving it if it got undone. So my final stroke will just kind of curve that way. And that's our second last stroke of the Y. And then to finish it off, we're going to draw a diagonal line that curves like that. And just like that, we've written the core of our design, which is the word spooky. How cool, right? Now what we need to do is add maybe a few other interesting elements to this and then clean it up a bit. I'm going to call this still part of finishing up the lettering design. And I'm just going to add a few elements that I think make it look a little bit more fun. So the first thing that I'm going to add is just a few little diagonal lines and maybe thicken up a few of the lines that we've already drawn. So I'm going to do these on a new layer just in case I want to remove them or toggle them on or off later. So I'm going to start with one here. We're just going to add a little bit of thickness here in the center of that S. And then I'm going to add a little bit of thickness here on the left side of the S, just like that as well. Okay, that may have been a little too much. So let's do it again and make it a little bit less pronounced. Okay, that takes care of the thickness there. I'm going to do the same thing here on the inside of the P, just like so. And we'll continue. I'm going to do the same thing again here on the O, left side, and then right side here with the O. Could even come a little bit further here on the O, and again, all I did there was just do a quick undo with a 2-finger tap. Same thing on this O. Left side, right side. Now on the K, I'm going to do something similar in here. We'll add that little line. I mean, I could even add one over here on the left side, which may not have been in my original design, but hey, let's add it here for fun. Just to show you that you can do things a little bit different and always have fun and experiment, especially when you're doing things digitally. The last one we're going to add here inside of the Y. And just like that, we've added just a couple of additional elements to make that look a bit more interesting. To do the cleanup, I'm going to start by selecting all of the layers that I used to draw, and then I'm going to add them to a group by clicking on that little group button at the top right of my layers panel here. Now, and I do this because this way I can preserve all of my original work before I flatten it and make it just one single layer that I can then clean up. So what I'm going to do here is left swipe on the group, tap on duplicate, and now I've duplicated that entire group. So I have this work preserved if I ever want to use it again in the future. Now I'm just going to collapse this initial group, turn it off because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to pinch these 3 layers together so that they become one single layer. Now, because I don't really need this in a group, I can just touch and hold on that layer, pull it up to the top, and then remove that group by deleting, left swiping, and then deleting. Now that I've got my artwork all on one layer, I'm going to create another one on top of it. Again, I like to work non-destructively like this. That way I have every bit of my work preserved. So if I ever need to go back and change something, I always have what I initially created preserved here in the design. So now I'm going to grab a different brush. Let's just grab one of the default Procreate brushes, which I have saved here in my favorites, which is the technical pen. Okay, so I'm going to use the technical pen now, and I'm just going to come in here and look for areas where I need to clean up the design. So I see an area here where there's a little bit of a zigzag in the line. So I'm going to reduce this brush size so it's fairly small. And then I can begin to fill in this area here. And again, if I just draw a line and then hold, it will keep it straight. And I can go through and clean up this design everywhere that I see something that's a little bit off. So there's a little bit of a corner there. I can clean that up. I see there's a little tiny part sticking out there. So I can go back to my original layer and I can erase that tiny little piece there by clicking here on my eraser. There, just like that. And I could come in and do that in a few different spots too while I've got the eraser selected. So there, maybe I want to erase that little jagged area. This little jagged area. Could erase this little corner since this was a duplicate of the other O. Let's erase this little edge here. And you can be as meticulous and careful you want with this cleanup. I'm obviously not going to go through and do every detail just because you'd otherwise be here with me for 3 or 4 hours. So we'll just keep it simple in this case and just try to get a fairly representative cleaned up design here. Next, I'm going to go back in my brush, select the layer that was on top. That was my cleanup layer. I could even come in and rename this layer by tapping on it, tapping rename. And with my Apple Pencil, I can scribble and then just write the word cleanup inside there, and it will rename the layer. I don't tend to be as organized with my layer naming, so lots of respect to you if you're very good at that. So the next step is, again, I'm just going to come in and maybe just clean up some of these lines a little bit. Just making the curve a little bit nicer. Let's see what other big areas I would want to clean up. Let's clean this area up a bit. We'll just fill in that. This top corner. Okay, I see I could have erased this area, but I forgot to, so let's just do that. Here I can do a little bit of a cleanup on that edge. And you can go around your design again and make sure it's as crisp and clean as you like to make you happy. See, this is a little bit of a glaring change. I could have erased it, but we'll clean it up with the pencil. And in this corner as well, we'll clean that up, and we'll clean that up, and this edge as well. Let's just add a little filler right there. Okay, and again, you can come in and make a curve a little bit smoother if you'd like. Just take your time with this and have fun. It's part of the fun part of these designs is you just get to really be free and experiment and play with your designs as much as you want. Let's call that good for the basic design. The next item I'm going to add is I'm just going to go ahead and add these flourishes as well. So I'm going to add another layer on top, and I'm going to select a different brush. This is from one of my Procreate brush packs, and I'm going to go in and select one of the detail and grid packs and select this More Bleed brush. And then I'm just going to start here from the top of the K, and then just by applying more and less pressure, I can add some really fun flourish lines. That line's a little thick, so I'm going to reduce the size of the brush and then just play around until I get a line that I like. Let's reduce the size even further. And then I'm going to just draw this curvature starting from the top of the cue. And the key here is the lighter that I press on the brush, the thinner the line is. The harder I push on the brush, the thicker the line is, like you can see between those two lines. I'm gonna make the brush just a little bit wider. I'm going at about 20% currently. I'm gonna start here with just a little bit of pressure, lighten, thick up here, and then we'll just curve it all the way in through our letters. To add the other flourish lines, I'm gonna rotate my canvas and then start tangentially aligned with that first one, and we'll just draw a little flourish there and one more at the top here that intersects with those two. The next step is to go ahead and start to add our fun visual elements, our drips and our droops and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to yet again work on another layer, and I'm always doing this just so that I can keep my design as separated and as clean as possible. I'm going to go back to my technical brush, which I have saved as a favorite here, technical pen. I'm going to select my technical pen, and I don't really need my lettering guides any longer, so I'm going to remove those guides. And I'm going to come back in and I'm going to add the Procreate grid that will help me build this design. So I'm going to select on canvas and I'm going to toggle on drawing guide. And if you can see there, it added a set of grids to my canvas, which I can then remove just by toggling that feature off and on again. So now that I'm in here, all you have to do for these is essentially just draw them in by hand. And these grids will just help me with trying to keep some of these vertical drip effects as close to vertical as possible. So that's what the grid helps me do. And using my technical pen, I'm going to just start drawing in some of these drips right here, just like that. And you don't have to be too careful. Just pull it down vertically like that. Maybe that part connects all the way to the bottom. And now we're going to come on the left side. This is a drop that ended up going all the way and reconnecting here at the bottom of the S. It's a really gooey one there. Very Halloweeny. Is that a word? We'll say it is today. No one really knows. The left side, we'll do this guy here. Maybe another little drip goes to this little ledge on that side. We'll come to the left side of the S here and we'll add one here like this. Okay, and just gonna have fun with these. Let's add one more here at the top. Maybe it got really slimy up there. Maybe here on the left. If you're not happy, again, just a couple of 2-finger taps and you've done an undo. How exciting, right? And don't worry, I know these haven't filled in yet, or we don't have them filled in, and you don't have to go back in and very carefully color them in. I promise you we'll have an easy way to add some, to fill these back in later. But we're just going to keep adding these drip effects for now. So we're just going to have fun with this. I'm going to add one more down here at the bottom. Maybe it looks like this. It curves back up here. And probably at this point, everything would drain down to this point. So let's go ahead and add a drip right there, just like that. And these can be as big or as small as you'd like. And really, it's just about, we're just adding these everywhere throughout the design. It can take a little bit of time, but just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. So here on the right side, right in the middle of the P, you had a really big droop going through there. Maybe that's it inside the P. Maybe we don't want to add anything more. So we're going to add a little bit more here to the bottom, right at that point again, where things may kind of drain off to. And then here on this edge of the P, let's add maybe a long one. Right there. And pull it all the way up. And these can be as skinny or as wide as you like. Okay, on this O, maybe we've got a couple of them hanging down here. So a big one right there. And then it comes down into another big one right next to it. Drips off the top. And maybe right on this point here on this O, maybe this time there's a little bit of a drip coming right off that O. And we'll add another one here at the bottom. And I'm just using these guides from Procreate, just to help me try to keep things straight as I'm drawing here. At this point, we're drawing. We're just having fun being drawing artists. Another drip here on this other O. And in this case, we don't want to make these identical, right? Even though we copied the O over, we want to keep them so that they look a little bit unique. So don't draw the same stuff on both of them. So on this one, maybe I've got a really long one coming off of that O, right? So just like that. Wow, that's a big one. And then maybe on this O, to make it a little bit different from the one next to it, maybe on this one we also have a big drop that came through the center here and just connected all the way down. And right next to that, maybe we've got a little one. It was super Halloween and slimy here on this one, right? And maybe a bigger drip off that side. And I feel like here on the K, we would also, again, just the pad of my hand did an inadvertent undo, so just did redo with 3-finger tap. So maybe here on the K, we've got a big bit of slime hanging off there at the bottom. And up here, maybe we've got one just hanging there through the center. Let's add those in. I mean, heck, maybe we have 2 of them hanging here in the center like that. And then here, because this was really drippy, apparently, because we had so much stuff coming there, we've got a drop coming off the bottom part of the K. And then maybe there's just a drop here that came off as well. And then it's in the process of hanging. It's in the process of falling down. On this side, we're just going to add a few more here to this Y. Let's add a drip here in this corner. Just like that. Just try to think of making it as slimy and drippy as you want. Or it could just be very slightly slimy. Maybe you have a slightly less slimy Halloween. That's okay. Okay, maybe here in this corner, it comes all the way down and connects. This corner got so droopy that it just connects with the bottom. Over here as well. Somebody slimed this Y really good. Why did it get slimed? It's the letter Y. That's why. I could sit here and amuse myself for ages. This stuff is so much fun. Okay, and over here, one more slime on the Y. And then I even thickened up this K, which is okay. We can do that here on my drip layer. I could go back and add it to my correction layer, but you know what? Let's just add it here anyway, just to show you things can be flexible. I keep undoing that little bit of slime on the Y, so I'm just going to draw here and angle it in. That's cool. Then we can add a little bit of slime there, like that's coming off. And then maybe one more. That's totally okay. Right there, just like that. And heck, maybe even pull in the K a little bit more. Make it look a little bit pointier. A little bit more like it's Halloween. What do you think? So now we've got the framework for our drippy droops. I think that's a technical term, right? That's how you'd pronounce it, drippy droops. We've got our drips and droops here on the lettering, and all we need to do now is really just fill these in. So I'm going to show you a cool trick on how we can fill these in very easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first turn off the guides because I don't really need those anymore. I've drawn all of those little lines, and you can see here it's kind of cleaned up. And I really don't need my background template because we've now created our brand new template that we love, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off my little spooky bit there, the word, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect every one of these little drops. So I'm going to, again, make sure I'm on that same layer, and I'm just going to connect these little drops here, just like so. And let's connect it over here as well. One other even cooler trick you could do, just to make sure you're not overrunning the letters, is I could turn this layer back on and I can make it less opaque, so make it more transparent. That way I can see that I'm not drawing outside of the S when I'm connecting these little slimy bits, or the drippy droops, right? So I can click on the N here, and then it will give me this little opacity slider. So I can just take it way down so I can still see it, but that it's mostly hidden, right? So that I can really just focus on connecting my little drippy droops or drips, whatever we'll call them. You tell me what you want to call them, and we'll call that the official name. What do you say? Okay, so I'm going to connect these down here just like that, and I'm going to connect these just like that here. Okay, I promise there's going to be a really cool trick, and you just want to make sure that both ends totally touch. So here, let's connect these like this, and then we'll connect that drop over here, connect these. And because most of this is going to overlap exactly with the lettering, we don't have to worry too much about like how deep into the lettering we'll go. It's totally okay. Let's connect these ones now. And this one over here. Okay, I promise this is going to be easier. It's going to ultimately be a time saver. It may not look like it right now, but I promise we're going to end up saving some time here at the end. Just oh, see, it went a little bit over there. Let's connect these two like that. And you don't have to curve. For some reason, I'm curving all these, but you could totally just draw a straight line like that to connect the two. Let's connect these two here and here and at the top. I'm sure I'm going to miss something, but that's okay, right? You can always come in and redo this later. And again, on this one, I'm just going to color this one. It's just easier than drawing that line. Over here, we're going to connect these. That wasn't a drippy droop. Over here. Over here. And it looks like I ended up, well, those that may be on a different layer. So I just want to make sure everything that I drew on this layer is ultimately connected. So let's connect the bottom here, like so. Connect these two ends. And I'm going to do the same here, right? Because I drew this to connect the K. All right, I think they're pretty much all done. And now for the cool trick. Now all I have to do is just grab from my little circle here in the top right of the canvas and just drag it into these spaces, just like that. See how easy that was? I'm gonna drag it here. That didn't seem to want to take, so we'll drag it here in the center. And I can color in any gap that didn't fill up. I want to fill in that area. I want to fill in that little drop. And we're just going to go around now and do the same thing to all these areas. And that way, I don't have to spend a bunch of time coloring them in by hand. All I have to do is drag my color into every one of these, and it will just fill up perfectly on its own. Isn't that a cool trick? You can do this with other stuff too, but for today, we're going to be just using it for our drippy droops. I think I've just officially decided that I love that name, so hopefully you're having fun with me. Maybe we'll all, oops, see, you can use it to fill your entire layer, and that was showing you that you can do that. And this one I'm just going to color because it'd be harder to just aim at that little spot. So we will finish this guy here, just like so. Down here at the bottom. And you'll see in a second, I'm excited to show you how this is gonna, that something got carried away there. Let's try to figure out. So one thing you can do is just start to close off areas and then hopefully find out where you lost the connection somewhere. Let's see that. Okay, now we're good. See that? We're learning all sorts of new tips and tricks today, right? Let's fill in that. There's another straggler somewhere in here, probably on this side. Let's try it one more time. Yep. Just like that, fill in that part. And we'll fill in that. We're almost done here. There appears to be another situation here. Now we've got it. I'm just gonna color that in manually. Oh, I forgot to connect one, but that's okay. Let's connect the bottom here. Drag in the color. And then we're gonna add one here. Oh. What may be happening is these are on a separate layer and I never connected them because they looked like they were connected. Now, if I do it, see how that works? So everything you're working on has to be on the same layer. Oh, looks like I missed a few. I missed the cool K. And let's get these last few here. And I believe that's the last one. Are you excited to see how this looks now? I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think it actually looks interesting just as it is right now, right? It's kind of a faded lettering with these weird drippy droops. I really do like that name now. So now I'm going to take my opacity up. And you see that there could be a fun effect that you could play with, right? You could take this design in a completely new direction and try doing something like this where these slimy bits are much more distinct from the original lettering. But for now, we're going to stay faithful with the design we created already. And as you can see, as I pull things up, it now looks like those little bits are dripping off of my lettering. So all I have to do now is really just kind of sell the shading and stuff like that. And we are almost done. I also noticed a few parts here that have a little gap, so I'm just going to fill those in. That's okay. Okay. And just like that, we've got our word spooky. Except that I forgot this little guy down here. So let's try to fill him in right there. A little coloring there. And there we go. Done. So for this last part, all I have to do is do some really simple shading. It doesn't have to be anything incredibly fancy or difficult. We're just going to add some light touches just to give the idea that this is three-dimensional. So yet again, you might have guessed it. I am going to work on another layer. So I'm going to add another layer on top. And this time I'm going to pick another default brush that comes with Procreate, and it's an airbrush. So let's go down here and look for our airbrushes. Here we go. Those are our airbrushes. And I'm going to use just a soft one. We're going to make it pretty small. See that right now? That's huge. I'm just looking for it just to add some little hints of highlights and all that good stuff. So I'm going to start here at on a new layer. And just to add one more trick, let's make this even more fun. I'm going to drag this layer down. Or you know what I'm going to do? Let's merge all of our layers one more time. So we'll do that same trick that we did before. I'm going to select the first layer I want to merge, the next one. I'm going to add that to a group, which again preserves all of them. Now I'm going to duplicate that group, hide the original one, and I'm going to merge these together. So now I have my complete final design all on one layer. And now I can add my shading and my highlights and all working on just this final layer. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, on my new layer where I'm going to add my highlights, I'm going to turn that into a clipping mask. So I just tap on the layer, this panel of options will show up, and I tap on this option called clipping mask. And what that's going to do, I'm going to highlight a different color, a very different one, just to show you, is if I draw with this brush now, you saw how thick it was before, anywhere on the outside of my letters, nothing shows up. So you can see I'm drawing here in this white space in the top left of my page, but all that's happening, because the brush is so huge, is the blue is showing up on the layer underneath. And as you can already tell, this is a pretty cool way to create some interesting looks very easily, right? You can see I just added this cool gradient just by drawing a line straight across. So this could go from this exciting neon green to the bottom, and it could be like a faded out look. You can do so much with this. I'm getting distracted already, but you can tell how much fun is possible here. So for now, I'm just going to use that tip to add some highlights. So I've got my soft brush selected. I'm on my clipping mask layer, and I'm going to make this brush really, really tiny, because all I want to do is add some little highlights there. Ideally, your highlights will be white, but I just have green in there because that's the last color I selected. So if I go to my color palette, move my selection here to the top left, now I have white selected, and I can just come in here and just add some little touches of light to these edges. And I'm going to go even smaller, really small. I don't want these to be too crazy. Okay, and I might even reduce the opacity a bit, but we can do that now, or we can do that later. Sometimes I don't like to work with 100% brightness, so for now, let's just go around 65% and work from there. So all I'm going to do is just add some lighting effects to the areas that I would expect to be most illuminated based on a light source. So if I say my light source is coming from this direction, right, then the top right edges and to some degree the right edges of my design will be lit up a little bit. Opposite of that, the bottom left edges of my design will be a little bit darker because they're kind of in the shade, right? So there's a sneak peek of what the next step is going to be. So all I have to do now is come in here and just add, again, top right side of my design is what's going to see the most of the illumination, and that brush may be a little too skinny, so let's just find whatever size that you like. This is just all about creativity and having fun. So let's add, I think there's probably that corner would be the brightest spot, and I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight there, just being light. Maybe a little bit of this right side. You don't have to be incredibly precise with this. You can even vary the size of the brush while you're working, just to add some variations and make things a little bit different with your design. And not everything has to be the same brightness, right? Some areas may, like this corner, may get a lot more brightness. Maybe the top of the P gets a lot more brightness at that corner. So just keep things like that in mind. Maybe this corner gets more bright and it's just a little bit less as it goes across. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep that little area bright and do the same thing in the other spots. Maybe in this case, that top edge is bright. Maybe this corner gets more brightness. Just make that as bright as possible. Right, I'm gonna do the same thing here with the K. Right here, maybe this top part gets a little bit brighter. Maybe there's a long ridge of a highlight there. Another highlight here in this corner. Same thing with the Y. Maybe there. Up here maybe as well. Okay, and then I would imagine this edge would also get a little bit light. Right, just like that. And we're just going to come in and add these little effects. Maybe on this side, it's not as bright because it's on the side, but maybe it still gets a little light. Maybe this part that's jutting out gets a little bit brighter. And down here as well, the part that's closest gets more light. And again, I just checked, making sure I'm working on a different layer. Okay, and you can come in and apply these as carefully or as meticulously as you'd like. Just a little bit there. Remember, keep it varied. That's what makes it a little bit more interesting and I think realistic. Not everything's going to get as much light. Remember, we're trying to make it appear like this is 3D. So let's add a little bit on that edge, maybe a little bit here. A little touch on that edge. Maybe this one got a little brighter in that corner. Just like so. Maybe down here. Okay, and with that, I think we've got most of the highlight edges on the actual letters. If I zoom out, you'll see that's how it looks. It's getting a little bit more 3D already, right? But what we want to do is add some more of these touches to the drippy droops, right? Using our fun name. So down here, and I'm going to add just a touch here in the center and then maybe pull it up. I'm just going to highlight every one of these little drops just to make it look like, you know, it's something shiny that's dripping. And I'm gonna focus on that little bit here in the corner on each one of them. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Just keep going all the way around. And again, I'm moving more quickly just because I need to wrap this up within 30-ish minutes. But you can take whatever time you want. Just have fun. Add these little details. Oh, maybe I need a little highlight here on the right edge. Maybe it's not super bright, but it would catch a little light, right? And we'll add another little drip there. As I put the pad of my hand down, it keeps doing the undo by accident. Sometimes that drives me nuts. So if that happens to you, you're not alone, I promise. So I'll add another one to that drop, and I'm just going to add these relatively quickly as I move across. So let's add one there. Let's make that part bright. I think that was a little bit too bright, actually. The one time I actually needed the pad of my hand to do an undo accidentally. Didn't happen. Okay, we'll add one here. Add one there. That may be a little bit too curved. This ended up being a big drop here. So we can spend a little bit more time with that guy. And this guy will have one as well. Just like that. And hopefully you can even start to see already how this is getting more of a 3D look. And we did it all by hand. We didn't need any kind of fancy 3D software or anything like that. We just did it all by hand. Isn't it fun? And you can totally do this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to make this one big. There we go. Kind of like that one. And we're going to come around there. And we're even going to highlight these lines because they would catch a little bit of light, right? So we're just going to focus that on the right edge. Get that drippy droop. And get this one here. Let's grab this left edge, give it a little bit of light, just like that. Maybe it gets really bright there in the top. And do the same thing, just working my way around, adding these little lights. And this is what really sells that 3D look. And you can do it completely by hand. Isn't that amazing? So much fun. Maybe there's a part here that got a lot more light. And just to make it look smooth, I'm just keeping things relatively consistent. Just like that. That one got a lot of light there. So maybe this one just didn't get as much. He's tucked away in this corner. But this guy's a little bit more pronounced. So let's give him a little bit more. And then maybe just like that. Okay, and I'm going to add... I think I lost this guy due to a pad undo. So I'm gonna make the brush just a little bit wider. That's a pretty big area here. And then just give it a little highlight. We could leave it like this and then just start working on the background. But the last part, the last thing that I like to do is also add another clipping mask and maybe add some shadows, right? So maybe we want the other end to be a little bit darker. So just to really, again, sell that 3D look, like it's something that's sticking out in 3D space. So I've got orange selected. Maybe like I could select an orange and look for a complementary color to the orange. Maybe I'm going to go with this blue. So I'll select that blue. And it's a bit bright, so maybe I go with one that's a little bit darker. I'm going to go back to my classic picker and just pick something that's a little bit darker. Okay, and in this case, I'm going to go back to my soft brush. I'm going to use something around the same size, maybe actually a little bit bigger. And I really want this to be very low opacity, just because I want it to be a very, very subtle addition. Okay, so I'm just going to add, you can probably barely see that I've added anything, but it just gives that bottom edge just a little bit of darkness. And I'm just going to touch up these left edges, these areas that I didn't highlight, just give them a teeny bit of darkness. And that will help sell a little bit that this thing's 3D and that maybe that edge is curved and there's a little bit of darkness on that edge. And using a color rather than pure black, I feel like just gives it a little bit more life. So again, just coming in, subtly adding these little elements of shadow here and there. You don't want them to be too pronounced. Just keep it subtle. Okay, just on the opposite ends of where we added our shading. Just like so. And again, you can be as careful and slow and meticulous with adding these shadows as you like. It's a really fun process. So hopefully, if I toggle this layer on and off, you'll see it's just a really slight change. Maybe if I zoom in, you'll get to see a little bit more. It's just a really slight change, but just gives it a little bit of darkness on that left edge. Okay, and now all that we have to do is pick our background color and maybe add a few elements of something interesting for that background. So we're going to draw, I'm going to create a little bit of a vignette. And what that means is I just want the corners of this composition to be a little bit darker. What that does is it just kind of helps pull focus into the center here of my artwork. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to pick a black brush this time. I'm just going to make the vignette black this time. I don't really need that to add too much life to the art. And I'm going to just take my brush, and you can be as precise or as loose with this as you'd like. I'm going to go back to my technical pen, which I have saved in my favorites. And I'm just going to draw a circle around my art. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just draw a loose circle like this, right? And if you do want it to be perfect, just hold on at the end and you will get a perfectly circular ellipse, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to use the trick that we used before. Again, I'm on a new layer, just checking that, and I'm going to fill in this outer edge. And you may think, well, that just looks like a spotlight at this point, but here's the fun trick. I'm going to take my adjustments area, and I'm going to apply a Gaussian blur to this layer. And then as I slide my pencil to the right, you see how it gets blurrier and blurrier. That spotlight is getting even more and more blurred. That's what's going to give me my smooth gradient transition. And you can make this as blurred or as unblurred as you like. I'm going to go for something, maybe we'll go for around 65% here. That looks pretty good. And it still looks like it's a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do now is reduce the opacity of this layer so that it's just a slight darkening of those corners. Can you see? So now I've got my vignette, and I can reduce the opacity of that even more if I think it's a little too much. Okay, and now I want to sell that this is hanging in 3D space, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that exact same technique, and I'm going to add just a little spot shadow on the bottom. So let's add another layer. So I'm going to draw a teeny little ellipse here at the bottom, just like that. Okay, can even move it up a little bit by grabbing my move tool, sliding it up a little bit further, and then all I need to do is fill my ellipse and do the same process again. Gaussian blur, blur my little shadow down here, again as little or as much as you want, because we're going to reduce the opacity anyway afterwards, right? So I want that to be quite blurry down here. So let's go, maybe I'm at 21% so far. So maybe right around 25%. Let's stop there. Okay, and now same thing, reduce the opacity. It just looks like there's a little hint of a shadow there. If I wanted to, I could still elongate it, right? Just like this, by selecting my freeform movement and just elongate it so it looks like maybe it fits with the wording a little bit more, and compress it a little bit more, whatever you want to do. Okay, and we'll slide that underneath. Okay, and then to add a fun transition to the background, or make it look like maybe there's something a little bit more interesting happening in the background, I can again grab my airbrush like so. I'm gonna go with that very soft one, and I'm gonna put this next layer behind my lettering because I want it to look like the background is behind it. So I'm going to add a new layer here. Select my brush, and then right here in the background, let's just do a test. Okay, that's pretty small. I want it to be big, a little bit bigger than that. Even bigger. Let's go crazy. Okay, that may have been too big. So let's go maybe right around 28%. And I'm just going to draw a line straight across the back. Okay, just like that. Again, I can blur it if I'd like. Gaussian blur, layer. Blur it so it's a little bit, I just want it to look like maybe there's a little bit of a gradient in the background. That looks good to me. And then maybe I want to move it down a little. Just take it here and slide it down. Okay, and now there's just a little bit of variation in the background as well. And I've almost finished my design. If I'd like to give the design a purple tint now, all I have to do is go back to my background layer and select a cool purple color. And this could be very saturated, it could be unsaturated, whatever you'd like, whatever color you want to go with. And you can modify your design, add different background colors, it could be very red, it could be orange as well if you want the very nearly invisible gradient between the two. Let's go ahead and finish this with a very dark and spooky purple, maybe something in there. And we will go ahead and call this a day. Thank you so much for learning how to make this spooky, drippy droopy, Blackletter calligraphy Halloween design with me today. Say that 10 times fast. That was a real word salad of stuff. Spooky, drippy droopy Halloween Blackletter calligraphy design. That's a lot to say. Anyway, if you'd like to get the Procreate brushes that I used in this design, just head on over to blacklettershop.com. You can also get a free set of Blackletter brushes by joining my amazing newsletter community. Just head over to procreatepowerpack.com and you'll get those free brushes in addition to a slew of other Blackletter freebies that I call the treasure trove. You can also check out this video for another completely free tutorial where I walk you through how to create this awesome Blackletter bee design also in Procreate. In the meantime, keep writing, keep playing, and have an absolutely fantastic day. I'll see you next time.